that justifies me hurting them. Welcome back to Fresh Bread. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we're going to be recapping and discussing what we talked about or we heard, the message that we heard on Wednesday night in our youth service. And so we're going to get right into this. But before we do, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you get a chance, like the video and comment on the video. That would help tremendously. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in, and let's get right into it. All right, so you have probably heard the expression eye for eye, tooth for tooth, life for life. And that's what we talked about on Wednesday night. We had a little breakout session, and some of us looked at the Old Testament, and some of us looked at the New Testament. And we came together after we talked about that and discussed it. Then we came back in and all met together, and we talked about it and taught each other what we had learned. And so what we're going to do here is just give you a basic recap of both of those sessions, and we'll kind of tie all this up in the end. So the first session was talking about Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 21. And it's not the only place in the Old Testament, but that's where we're referencing today. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 21 says, "Your eye shall not pity, life shall be for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot." And so this law was given in order to help basically a judge. This was to help a judge hear a case and make the judgment that should be necessary. That's how this originally was intended to be interpreted. So, for example, if I hit you, struck you, and there would be a punishment for that offense. The idea behind it is actually quite, I would say, the opposite of what we might think that it means. We kind of traditionally interpret it as, well, that means if somebody hits me, I can hit them back. If somebody pokes my eye out, I can poke their eye out. If somebody chips my tooth, I can chip their tooth. And what is really happening here is there was an attempt here to show us that there needs to be a balance in our judgments. It was to help the judges say, okay, this person had their, let's say they had their sheep stolen. Okay, well then the person that stole, they have to pay. They have to pay some kind of fine. They have to do something that's equivalent to, let's say, the cost of that sheep, or give something up in return that they have that would equal what that was worth. And so the idea behind it was that a judge would be officiating over a case and would give the appropriate judgment, not to say that we could immediately retaliate or that we could immediately do wrong to somebody else. But the law was there to help us dispute matters and to have law preside over the children of Israel, so that there could be appropriate judgments and things made, so that it would all be understood and there would be a hearing, a court case, etc. That's kind of painting the picture for you. Okay. So I asked the questions, is this a fair judgment? Does this judgment make sense? Does this law appear to be balanced? Well, at first glance, it does. It seems to be, at first glance, it appears to be balanced. That makes sense. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye, a life for a life. That makes sense. It's very balanced. So yes, does the judgment make sense? Well, yes, it depends. Are you reading into it? What if you're on the receiving end of this? Do you think that the judgment makes sense? And some might say no, but it should. It should make sense. And this is a fair judgment after all. A foot will equal a foot. A tooth will equal a tooth. Life for a life. And so we get this good picture of balance there. And so the true intent behind the law is that it acts as a boundary in a way to warn me not to do things or to behave in a certain way that would deliver a punishment that I did not want to experience. That's what it was kept. That's what the law was intended to do. The law was set and it was ruled on in a court. The court was set up to govern the Israelites. When a dispute happened, it was to be brought before a court to hear the case. The original intent behind this law was to prohibit out of balance reactions, meaning someone didn't lose their life over stolen property. It was never meant to be a means of retaliation by the one that had been wronged or serve as a justification for vigilantism. Rather, it was meant to serve as a guideline to help judges make the proper or balanced judgment in each case. So this governed physical matters. This governed the actual physical things that were happening. This person got stolen from, this person was injured, this person was killed, etc. But the piece that's missing is, how does that reflect the person in the heart, in the matter of the heart? And that's what the New Testament provides. So let's go to the New Testament. So Jesus is speaking, and this is in Luke chapter 6, verse 29 through 31. It says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away." And so I ask this question: what is the reason for Jesus clarifying this law? Why does he bring this law up? Why does he key on this particular verse from the scripture in the Old Testament? Well, let's give a little backstory here. The religious leaders of the day, they were using that law as a means to carry out vigilantism. They were using it as a means to getting even. And so they were using that to say, well, this person hurt me, so that justifies me hurting them. They actually weren't letting a court decide what the punishment should be. They were taking it upon themselves, and they were teaching their people to take it upon themselves and to sort out those matters for themselves. Somebody stole from you, well, that gives you the right to steal from them. And so what Jesus does is he comes up into the picture and is like, you guys are completely misunderstanding what's going on here. Let's get to the heart of the matter. Let's figure out what's really going on here. And so he clarifies. He says, so I tell you not to resist an evil person. He says these things are going to happen. But he doesn't say that law is old and we're doing away with it. He doesn't say that. He's pointing at something much more specific, something much more important in the matter. It's not about the stuff. It's not about the things. It's not even about you being hurt. It's about your attitude towards this offense. It's about your where your heart is in the matter when it comes to being hurt, being stolen from, being whatever the case may be, whatever the injustice was. Jesus turns that over on its head and says, no, those things are going to happen, but it's your response that matters the most. And so he clarifies it by saying, look, if these things happen, go the extra mile. If somebody's going to steal your cloak or steal your tunic, give them your cloak. He's saying don't repay evil with evil. He says repay evil with good. And that's one of Jesus's central messages, repaying evil with good. And that is so radical because they were using it as a means to justify their evilness in their heart. And Jesus says, no, don't do that. This is more important. So that's the important thing to realize there. The courts were always going to be the ones that decided and were giving judgments, and they were the ones that were to look at these cases and say, here's what's balanced, here's what's fair. However, that just dealt in the matters of the physical. Jesus took it to the next level, and he says, yeah, those matters are going to be solved in the physical. It's going to be okay. The courts will do what the courts are going to do. He says, but what the courts can't touch is what's going on in your heart. And he says that's where you need to work at the most. Don't repay evil for evil. Repay evil with good. So the next time you're dealt with some kind of injustice in your life, you shouldn't repay the evil that was done to you with more evil. It should be repaid with good. A tough thing to do, if you ask me, but the Lord has given us His Spirit, and by His Spirit, all things are possible. We can do it. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this message, and I hope that you gathered something from it. But anyway, we will see you in the next one for sure. Have a great day, and God bless.